Now a major update to a story 48 Hours has been following. A North Texas woman was found guilty yesterday in the 2011 shooting death of her husband. The report was featured on 48 Hours back in May. Correspondent Peter Van Sant looks at the trial where his interview became a key piece of evidence.
That she thought that she could go on 48 Hours and say this outrageous, crazy.
Prosecutor Jack Strickland in closing arguments yesterday where Michele Williams stood trial for the murder of her wealthy husband, Greg.
It's a fantasy world that she lives in.
It was a world away from their once glamorous life. There was a mansion, exotic cars, lavish parties.
Greg treated me like a queen. He was the most amazing father to Michaela.
The life of privilege came crashing down in October 2011 when Michele says an intruder attacked her, then shot Greg dead in his own bed with his own pistol. When police interviewed Michele, they found her story hard to believe, and after hours of interrogation, she changed it.
If he did it and you covered it up, just tell me.
He did.
Huh?
He did.
She told police Greg had committed suicide and that she cleaned up the scene and staged it as a murder to protect her daughter. But cops weren't buying that story either. Michele, they believed, was the killer. But with no evidence, prosecutors offered her a plea deal, up to 18 years in prison if she admitted she tampered with evidence and wielded a firearm.
Who shot Greg?
I have my assumptions, and that person is letting me sit here.
But in an interview with 48 Hours, just before her plea was finalized, Michele changed her story yet again, back to the intruder theory.
I'm saying he had his own weapon.
The judge was furious. He revoked the plea deal and ordered Michele Williams to stand trial for the murder of her husband.
And if not for me, they should.
If she's talking, she's usually lying.
Michele's sister Laura told 48 Hours she has been a pathological liar her entire life. Almost 3 years after Greg Williams was shot dead, Michele went on trial last week.
All right.
With no forensic evidence, the case was purely circumstantial.
Greg Williams left behind a not insubstantial estate.
The defense surprisingly never raised the intruder theory, but was back to claiming it was a suicide.
I'll say it again, Michele panicked.
During the trial and in closing arguments, Michele's interview with 48 Hours came back to haunt her.
There was an intruder in the house.
The jury deliberated for 7 hours. The verdict, guilty of murder. Michele Williams could get life in prison. For CBS This Morning, Peter Van Sant, Napa, California.
Wow. I feel 48 Hours strikes again. You know, it could be either a good or bad thing for you when 48 Hours says we want to talk to you, depending on your point of view. But once again, they've made an outcome and a huge story.
A very good interview about Peter.
Yeah, very good interview indeed.